998 points. Virginia 867, Louisville 792. And here we go with our first diver, Erin Isola.
So you see Cameron Hidalgo there actually taking her last warm-up dives before we get ready. And as we get ready to kind of look at this contest, you know, how you get those judges' execution scores, I just want to talk about that just a little bit. So you're looking at these execution scores of 10 being excellent and 8.5 to 9.5 very good, and that 7 to 8 range. Those are the scores that we're looking to see from these athletes and multiplied by the degree of difficulty so that they score over those 50 to 60 points. And that's what you're going to see our winner is going to be. How they get there to those execution points is that you start with their starting position, their approach, you're actually the takeoff and how they look in the air in that flight position and entry into the water, and their overall impression of the dives. And the judges are given those scores pretty much instantaneously right after they go in.
All right, here's our first dive, Isola.
And that's a nice solid start for Erin. You know, she's starting, this is her first final at the ACC Championships as a sophomore there, doing an inward 1.5 somersault pike. A good dive. You know, 7, 6.5, solid, straight up and down, nice position. Needs to be a little more dynamic to get those 8s and better.
6 dives here in the women's 1 meter. Cameron Hidalgo up now. 2018 NCAA Zone B Diving Championships qualifier in all 3 events.
And this is Cameron's second final, and it's actually the same dive that we just saw from Erin, and about the same, maybe a tiny bit better.
The youngster who Jason Bauman knows well during his time with USA Diving, Emily Grunn, freshman for North Carolina.
And she's pretty relaxed and comfortable up there, and that laugh and smile I've seen quite a few times from her, and sort of happy about competing, and she really rises to the occasion. So she's going to do also an inward 1.5 somersault pike, and we're going to see a lot of those here. So the judges can really compare each one and what they are and who needs to do a little better and where we are. So on Emily's dive, I liked her start, but if you notice, she goes a little sideways off the diving board here. She kind of goes a little at an angle, and that's why you see those judges' scores come down a little bit from those other 2 that we just saw.
Millie Hafferty, a 2-time British national champion bronze medalist.
Now Millie's going to do a full twisting 1.5, so a forward 1.5 somersault with a full twist. And again, starting with a little easier degree of difficulty. And you notice we're going to see a lot of examples of that hurdle that she just did. And she's kind of got this hop hurdle where she's jumping to get the board moving to go a little higher, lands a little bit back on the end, which is going to affect her score as well.
She had 175, 165, a lot of 7s. Here's Maddie Klein, who has had an outstanding week here.
She has, and again, this is an inward 1.5 somersault pike, the third one. And again, I think you're going to see a little bit sideways, and maybe that's our angle, and it's hard for me to tell, but it does look like it's a little twisted, and some of the judges can deduct for that, and it depends on where you're sitting there too. All those judges aren't exactly in the same spot, so they see things just slightly different.
Maddie Pullinger, she owns the 2nd best score in Duke history on the 1 meter, a 326.7.
And she's a freshman from Australia, also an inward 1.5 somersault pike. That's a really good start for her. I love the takeoff and how vertical and straight in she went on the bottom. She should be rewarded for that. Great feet, nice pike position, and good entry straight up and down.
Ayla Bonnewell, 2017 ACC 1 meter diving champ for Florida State.
Ayla is going to start also with the inward 1.5 somersault pike. And a lot of competitors like to start with a back takeoff, not necessarily walking down the board and taking that hurdle and just get settled in a little bit. And good. I would say that Maddie's just before her was a little bit better. It went a little higher. But again, very quick and dynamic and straight up and down. Just not as explosive and high off the diving board.
7s from almost every judge. Would you have given a 7?
Yeah, I think that's the right score. I think it was a good dive. I don't think it was a very good dive. I think that's the right category for it to be in.
Alicia Blagg. Got to be the favorite, right?
I think so. Just as far as her style, everything looks smooth and effortless, and you just see little extra. And it's those things as you're sitting down as a judge and you're looking at the overall impression. That was a beautiful dive. It has a beautiful toe point going into the water, and she's been there, competed internationally several times, has a lot of experience, and that was a great start.
Well, and she is showing it. Look at that score, 61-2. She had a 9. Of course, that was dropped, but the second dive coming up now for Erin Isola.
And you see that's Erin's forward 2.5 somersault pike. So with that hurdle, little step back on the end of the diving board, and then kind of washes by a little bit. You know, it'll be interesting to see how she kind of handles that first final. It's a little bit of nerves, and being the first diver too. So in this round, it looks like we're going to see 6 forward 2.5 somersaults pike. So again, you can really compare and contrast as a judge. And that's awesome for Cameron. Cameron last year was injured at the ACC Championships right before the contest started in the warm-up session and didn't get to compete at all. She came back this year, has made 2 finals on platform and again on 1 meter, and that was a very well done front 2.5 pike.
Emily Grund, her second dive.
Also that forward 2.5 somersaults pike. And not as high as Cameron's, but as vertical and clean on the entry. And that's why you're going to see those scores be a little bit lower, is that it doesn't have the same amplitude. And it's a lot of those pieces you're looking at, and you're splitting hairs between what's a 7 and what's a 6, and all of those little differences and nuances. So Millie has chosen to do a little different order. She's going to do a back 1.5 somersaults pike here. So going backwards, rotating 1.5 times. Stopping it and putting the water down. And when you look at that, those dives are a little harder sometimes for people because you're actually rotating away from the diving board, but you can watch her see the diving board as she comes out in spots and pulls it just a little bit over, but you'll see underwater she does what's called a knee save to try and stop that from going farther over and bringing more water down with her.
Phenomenal breakdown, Jason, enjoying it. Here's Maddie Klein.
Again, this is a forward 2.5 somersault pike. And what I like about Maddie's dive there is she's very explosive off there and a lot of gymnastic start. It's a little sloppy on coming out there, kind of lost her feet a little, flexed them a little bit instead of being really super tight and giving that clean entry that we've seen from a couple of the other ladies. And so it throws a little extra water.
Another Maddie Pullinger.
And again, you see the amplitude she gets, and she's got a nice balanced turtle. Now she's a little off on the corner. Didn't bother her. She stayed really relaxed and let it go up, and then super vertical and straight up and down at the end.
As high as an 8.5, as low as a 7, as you talked about over the last couple of days, the variance and what judges see.
You know, and they throw out the 2 highest and the 2 lowest, so the 3 in the middle are what gets kept and gets multiplied by that degree of difficulty. So it allows to have some different opinion there in what you see. And that's a good dive by Ayla. It's a little bit forward. It didn't go up as high, and she kind of worked it down and it wasn't a huge miss, but it wasn't necessarily a hit.
So what is John Proctor saying to her right now?
You know, he's saying, you know, kind of relax a little bit. Let's get set up on the end of the diving board a little better on that next one, and let's kind of move on to the next one and keep battling here because it's going to be a contest.
Randy Abelman is the Miami diving coach as he watches Alicia Blagg. Wow, it is smooth, isn't it?
Yeah, and it looks effortless. And when you're doing it correctly, it doesn't look like you're working very hard. It's just that nice, quick movement and good balance and getting in.
2018 ACC 3-meter champion with a slim lead right now over Maddie Pullinger from Duke.
You know, and that back 1.5 is a little lower degree difficulty at 2.3. So, you know, maybe that's part of the reason it's a little narrow there.
Third dive for Erin Isola from Notre Dame.
And again, Erin's put in that position where she's following up the back 1.5 we just saw. And it's okay, it's satisfactory. It's just a little bit short on the finish, but pretty well controlled. And like the smile and the good positive reaction there, that's always nice.
So now Cameron Hidalgo from Mission Viejo, California. Sophomore at Georgia Tech, her third dive.
And it's another back 1.5 somersault pike. And that was good. She's putting a little run together here, having good contest and good vibes. A little back from the diving board. She can let it stand up and go even a little higher than that, but really accurate, good spot, and come out and stop the vertical dive.
Emily Grun, her coach Abel Sanchez actually sat in your seat during one of these ACC championships because he didn't have a diver in it.
And Abel and I are about the same age. We actually competed against each other in college and before, so we have a long history too. That was a nice back 1.5 pike from Emily there. And again, she's just super technically sound, you know, and keeps going in on her head and vertical and keeping herself in every contest.
Millie Hafferty.
So she's going to do a reverse 1.5, so that hurdle first, and then rotate backwards toward the diving board and try to go in straight. Did a nice job there. If you watch when she comes out, I see a little flutter of the feet, which may affect the scores there and be a little lower. So right in here, the legs separate slightly, and then she does a nice job to work it down to vertical.
She's part of that England connection to Miami, is Alicia Blagg, also from England. Here's Madeline Klein.
Madeline's doing a back 1.5 somersault pike again. Many competitors in this round. And that was nice. It was fast. She stopped it. She was vertical. Again, the last thing you see of those feet, and they're a little bit not extended all the way, and it's just that last impression you see going in. And those are the difference between getting an extra half point from your judges there.
You talked about execution 3 times, and they got to get 50 to 60 points per dive.
Yeah, that's what you're trying to get, is you're trying to get as close to that 60-point range as possible.
Good start here for yet another freshman for Duke.
And I like that from her too. I thought it was moving back from her a little bit, but she did a super job to stop it and come out. And you'll watch her let go and open her body and press her legs back and stop and super vertical. And again, that tight feet gives that lasting impression of, hey, that was a really well done dive.
So Ayla Bonnywell sitting in 5th after her first 2 dives. This is her 3rd.
And again, we're going to see another back 1.5 somersault pike. And it's going to be satisfactory. I just think it's a little slow, and then she comes out early and kind of wiggles to get it down, but it doesn't quite have that same piece. But it's so hard because you have to come out at just the right time, hold your body shape, and not let it get away from you, and that's easy to do on that back 1.5 pike.
So here's your leader through 2, looking so fluid. 3rd dive for Alicia Blagg.
And this is her forward 2.5 somersault pike, and there's just not a lot of deductions there. The only one I really see is the hurdle where she does step back and kind of doesn't land quite directly on the end of the diving board. Right here, she's back with her feet. But as far as body shape and position and the vertical line, I don't have any complaints at all.
Yeah, her line is just, I mean, it's beautiful, right? Like when you see it in the air, and you can, judges like that.
They do, and it's part of this whole overall impression of being graceful but acrobatic at the same time.
4th dive for Erin Isola.
And I like that effort from Erin. She lands a little bit over the end of the diving board with her feet. Again, doesn't panic, lets it go up, and does a nice job to come out at the right time and stop it. So her toes are hanging just actually right on the end. That was very good. And just a little pulled by on the finish.
Georgia Tech's diving coach is John Ames.
And you're going to see John's watching this reverse 1.5 pike and watching the direction. And again, Cameron's got something rolling here. She just seems to be in a really good place. That was super good balance, nice direction, and straight up and down again.
So that'll bring up Emily Grun right in the middle, fourth after 3 dives with 3 to go.
And you know, one of the things you listen to is that sound that she's got on the end, but you see her, she's a little quick off the diving board and doesn't go quite as high. And so it's that small nuance of, okay, but it's more vertical. And so you're trying to evaluate and differentiate between these little components, but good sound from the hands. See one of her teammates there enjoying it, pretty excited about his for finish.
Yeah, good job by our crew of also seeing Coach Sanchez. He was pleased. Here's Millie Hafferty.
This is Millie's inward 1.5 somersault pike. Good, now that's a nice dive. And again, just things that kind of jump out as a judge and you're sitting down there. On that dive, as she starts to rotate, you see her feet kind of flex going by the diving board and then point right back again. To me, that's just a little distracting, and it's, well, here's a half point, you're making that small deduction. So you're kind of using both sides of your brain. The art side and also the science side of what's it look like and what's my overall impression and what are the components that go along with it.
Madeline Klein, as I feel like we're going inside the brain of Jason Bauman and liking it.
And that's a nice reverse 1.5 pike from Madeline. I thought she just pulled by on the finish and didn't keep her head back on the lineup, so it went a little over. Good position, nice movement. Just got away from her in the finish.
Hanging in there. I'll tell you, Dan Colella, the Duke head coach, and then the diving coach, Nunzio Esposito, I mean, they are loving this freshman class.
Yeah, and that was almost a really good dive. I thought just tried to stop it and didn't want it to get away from her, and so she kind of moved her hands in sort of a strange way to her entry here and kind of held it short, and so it was really splashy on the entry. But the components are all good up until that last little finish.
Ayla Bonnywell for Florida State.
And Ayla, again, the reverse 1.5 somersault spike. Good. Now, I like that start from her. She's got a little wiggle on her out. As she comes out, she gets straight and then loosens up in her tummy and then kind of pulls a little bit. And so it's just a little distracting. I see her let go right there and then kind of pull through her hips to get it all the way up to vertical.
When Miss Blagg finishes, I want to know the score before they score.
That's probably going to be about 7s or so. It's a little forward to go higher than that.
Look at you. You're right on the money. International judge Jason Bauman bringing a great wrinkle to our coverage here of diving. Enjoyed it last year, and great to have you here as Miss Blagg now with a much bigger lead over the Duke freshman.
You know, and on women's 1 meter is that if you can build that lead a little bit every time, it's a different story than what we were talking about the other day, because there's not necessarily the variability in the degree of difficulty. It's a nice reverse 1.5 half from Erin here, doing a 2.2 degree of difficulty, so a little lower, but pretty nicely done and pretty satisfactory.
All right, Cameron Hidalgo, third after round 4. Seems even more comfortable today.
Yeah, and you know, that takes time. And you know, she's coming back from a pretty serious injury, but doing a really good job, and looks like she's on track, and just looks very confident. And her finishes are better. She's stretching through the water and doing that. That's her lowest degree of difficulty dive, but high on the execution side.
And she was just a point behind Pullinger going into this dive, and that looked pretty good. There was a lot of 7s up there. And her teammates love it. Emily Grund just outside of medal worth, sitting at 4th through 4.
And again, a little lower degree of difficulty, that full twisting 1.5 somersault. It's a good dive. A little of her feet are stacked as she goes in the water, and what I mean by that is that her toes are kind of crossing and her legs are just not quite perfectly together going in there at the end. So a little slight deduction in there in the middle. And again, you're looking at very small pieces as you're watching the whole sport.
Yeah, judges agreed on her dive, pretty much all 6.5s and a couple 7s. Millie Hafferty, she was 8 through 2, and she's climbing up.
Yeah, and now this is a forward double somersault pike, and I know that Brandy and I were talking about it, is that She struggles a little bit with some of the twisting categories, and she's done reverse 2.5 somersault tuck, but they decided that this was a better option for him. It's a hard dive to score very well on because it's that feet first entry. You got to come out, and you can even see she does a front 2.5 pike in the next round, and she's about 6 feet above the diving board when she lets go and almost upside down still, and it's blind where you go to your feet.
Fun one to watch, though, is Madeline Klein, 6 through 4 dives.
And this is a big dive for Madeline. This is an inward 2.5 somersault tuck. It's the only one in the women's contest we're going to see today. That's a dive you'll see a lot in the men's contest. So it's a more gymnastics dive. She turns a little bit off the diving board on that beginning. And again, what you also see is that big split tuck, and as the feet are apart that way, that's a deduction from the judges too. So risk reward. It's a higher degree of difficulty, but the execution scores are a little lower down there in the 4 range and more of the deficient category.
Madison needs a big dive here.
And what I would tell you is, you're right, but what you saw from her was it looked like she was trying to do a big dive instead of trying to do the same balanced turtle she did, so it was a little quick off the end and got anxious, but did a nice job to work it down. But again, the difference in your scores there between the 6.5 and the 8 is the little wiggle in the knees and the looseness in the middle. Did a great job with it, but could have been a little cleaner.
So Ayla Boniwell.
So there's another example. This one's a forward twister. That's a forward 1.5 with 2 twists, a 2.6 degree of difficulty. And one of the things that's great about Ayla's diving is that she's so fast. She's just so quick. She just isn't quite as powerful and as smooth. And that is a forward 1.5 full twist, again at the 2.2 degree of difficulty, but just beautiful lines and super and easy looking. And again, you hear me say that a lot. It just looks so smooth. She looks so controlled and composed. But as a judge, one of the things you're looking for is that overall impression.
277 for the superstar from England. Last year's 3-meter champion. And the final dive for all 8 divers here as part of the ACC Swimming and Diving Championships.
And that's a good one for Erin to finish on. That's a back 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twists. And she did a really nice job. Super consistent, up and down and vertical. That'll be good for her confidence going forward into the NCAA zone meet.
She's got a veteran diving coach at Notre Dame. Tell us about him.
Yeah, Kai Ming's been there for a very, very long time and certainly had some good success and had a diver in the final yesterday on the platform event, even though they don't have a platform.
Cameron Hidalgo making some noise here in the women's 1 meter.
And it's good. It's going to be close. I think we got a real tight competition going in there.
Ooh.
It's a little sideways, actually. I think she comes out of the twist a tiny bit early.
Well, these scores are going to hurt.
Going that way, and that's going to be difficult for her to move up.
So Emily Grunn, 4th after round 5.
And Emily's doing the exact same dive. Cameron just did the back 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twist, and the same one that Erin did as well. So like I said, a lot of the same dives you're seeing here. And Emily did a better job on the out and getting square and on the finish, but was a little early and didn't get her arms all the way through, so it didn't go quite as high.
And she's not going to be able to pass Hidalgo as Millie has been getting better with each dive.
Right, and so she just did a forward double somersault pike. This time we're going to see the forward 2.5 somersault pike. And it was solid. It's up on the end of the diving board. It's up in the air super high. She held it a little bit short on the finish. Could have let her hips get all the way up to vertical and straight up and down.
She gets to learn a lot, too, from her teammate, right?
And it's so huge having a training partner and somebody that pushes you as you go and that you're comfortable with and you work together that way. And Randy does a great job. He's been there a long time at Miami. Madeline
Klein, 8th, but of course she had a lot to celebrate yesterday.
She did, and you know, making a second final and on 1 meter, and that's a hard back-to-back and diving in that contest again. It's a good back 1.5 to finish. A little loose in her body position going in the water and needs to clean it up, but solid.
3 more dives to go here in our women's 1 meter finals.
So we've seen a lot of these, but here's another one of those back 1.5 somersaults with 1.5 twists at 2.5 degree of difficulty. And good. And I don't know if you can hear that sound going in the water, but you kind of hear her making that hands grabbed and the line and the entry, and that sound actually helps. It makes it sound better, and it gives you that impression of, hey, that was a good dive too. And also she brought a lot of the water down with her pike save action underwater.
Ayla Bonniwell. 2 more divers. We can tell you that Pullinger is ahead of Hidalgo.
And Ayla's last dive here is also a back 1.5, 1.5. And that was her best dive, in my opinion, of what she's done today. It jumped the best, and we used the diving board the best. Just a little over-rotated, but I really like that direction she went off the diving board first.
So you mentioned international. Pullinger from Australia, Blagg from England, and they look to be your top 2.
Absolutely. And so Alicia here is going to do a reverse 1.5 somersault, 1.5 twist free. So the same dive we just saw, except for going forward and then rotating back toward the diving board. And did a nice job. It's a little over the end. That cushion she had to go into that's going to make sure that she finishes our winner there too. But it was a very good dive.
Knew what she needed to do to take home another championship, as Alicia Blagg will win this.
Yeah, and that's great for Miami as well, and for her personally, and that means that she's a double winner, and a good smile there. She won the 3 meter contest a couple of days ago on Wednesday, and then winning the 1 meter contest today on Saturday, and actually having a couple days off. So good use of their teammates there and support, and the 2 of the men will actually dive on platform. So that's a sweep for the Hurricanes on springboard, because her teammate, actually, Briadam, won both the 1 meter and 3 meter. And great for Coach Randy Abelman and his team and the Canes there.